Welcome to the Heidelberg and BPIF webinar on data for a better performance. My name is Paul Chamberlain and I'm part of the Heidelberg team here live in our showroom in London. I'm really pleased to also say we've got two experts in the industry. To my right, Matthew Peacock, who is a process and business specialist. And we've also got Marcus Clifford, who is the Eastern and Southeast Divisional Director for the BPIF.
Hello.
Let's crack straight in. And I know Marcus is chomping at the bit. Marcus, what are your BPIF members talking to you about the importance of data?
Well, I wanted to set the scene, really, and it was interesting when we had our pre-chats last week about performance and some of the gaps in performance. I'm going to come on to that in a second. Matthew and I have worked together for many years. Matthew was originally heading up the lean engineering process review team within the BPIF. And the BPIF, our role in all of this, working with companies and members across the industry, is to help improve what they do, help improve their performance, make sure they're compliant, make sure they've got a strong business model that can go forward, and help them on generating ideas, knowledge, and innovation. So our role is to support the industry. So I'm really pleased to be here today talking on this particular subject, a really interesting subject. So I suppose setting the scene, really, in terms of what I see across the terrain. No doubt about it, business owners feel embattled under all these pervasive pressures and forces. And there's a real gap comes out in Paul's data, as I talked about earlier. There's a real gap between those that are managing data, capturing the right data, using data, creating the right culture in their business, and performing better than those that aren't. And one of the problems that I see is leverage of resources. Those companies that can leverage their resources and do better, and those that struggle to leverage their resources and are sort of clearly struggling. And data is just so important in terms of capturing the right data and using data, and a real differentiation point in the marketplace. I think one of the issues coming out of this in terms of the debate and an action, and these things can change tomorrow, is making data your friend, making data accessible, making data, changing the nature of data so it's not intimidating in terms of managing and helping drive your business forward. And back to the sort of battle analogy, what I see really data, in a battleground situation, getting data is like getting good intel. You need good intelligence to be able to drive and manage your business. So I think the opportunity out of this is, whether you're a large business or a small business, is tomorrow you can start to change the direction of travel and start to use data. And Matthew will come on to what type of data is important, but also what stops companies from actually using data or actually creating a culture in their business which is going to create reduced waste, reduce inefficiency, increase performance. All these things that businesses need to combat this particular marketplace. So, I've always seen the printing sector as being very positive, a great can-do attitude. One of the great things about our sector throughout COVID was the ability for our sector to adapt, be flexible, change. And also a real coming together, and we saw that in all sorts of businesses, but our sector, we are in this together. And I think, looking at data and where it works is companies that actually start to dig down deep and use data, use it as part of team ownership, making data your friend. And it's not a them and us. And where I see companies performing, again, effectively and performing better, is everybody owns the data and everyone has a common purpose. And I've seen some companies in the last 3 or 4 weeks, some great examples, large and small, where the effectiveness of this is very tangible. I asked a few companies, a few members, large and small, about how they see data and how they use data. So Micropress, who year on year have made $1 million plus net profit, talking to Rob Cross. I was up at their open day a couple of weeks ago. Rob describes data as fundamental as part of the success of their business. And going around and walking around that business, you can see people taking ownership of it and not being intimidated by data. And also, back to Matthew in a few minutes' time, they understand what data is important for everybody to take ownership of and discuss in a meaningful way. Simon Cooper at SolarPress. Now, in terms of setting benchmarks in online businesses, in terms of streamlined workflow, cutting out cost, any area in their business where there's friction, they take that area of friction out. But Simon Cooper at SolarPress talks about data being the lifeblood of his business. A lovely printing business in Norwich, and I say the size doesn't matter. Mark Hollinger from Hollinger Print. So like a lot of companies, they differentiated their product offering during COVID. They did all the right things in terms of flexing and adapting their business model. But Mark talks about data in terms of helping validate decisions we're making, and also the direction that business is taking. But what he says is, but we go way deeper, looking at data across every area, such as lead source, win rates, key customers, business sectors, productivity across our different presses, and areas of production through to delivering performance. And Mark is a small business, and resource and time is always an issue for business owners and teams because you're spinning plates now. But Mark is an example of somebody who sort of can cut through this and see the real benefits. And he characterizes it as, it's a really tough environment. We know this. You're living it every day. So as a result, he says, and this is why he lives and breathes this, and his team does, we need to be brilliant within the area we specialize in, having clear, timely, relevant information. It's essential. Like the saying goes, and we all hear this, you only manage what you measure. Now, small business, time poor, resource poor, but they manage to use data in an intelligent way, and they're outperforming their peers as I see it, across lots and lots of different businesses. Richard Osborne, MD of Pureprint. Use of data is an integral part of our drive to work smarter. Companies that talk about data, use data, make data their friend, clearly are sort of outperforming the sector. And there's a gap between those that are and those that aren't. So part of our role and part of this today is to sort of highlight issues, open up knowledge, open up debate, and try and get those companies that aren't harnessing the benefit and power and things they can change tomorrow and see some impact and effect of. Our role as a BPIF, and I'm working with the likes of Heidelberg, and of course Heidelberg in terms of developing their technology solutions where there's transparency on data and you can start to access data in a quick and immediate way. So it is really important. So our role here today is to highlight to those companies that aren't, a great opportunity, we can work with you. People like Matthew have got 30 years of experience of working with companies and identifying why they aren't doing it, how they can improve what they're doing, what are the right measures, but also help instill the right culture and get ownership and teams working together. So that's my sort of view really of just sort of setting the scene. It's doable, it's achievable, and the positive thing is there's a great opportunity for companies to start to use this and start to perform better, reduce cost, increase efficiency, make their business model more survivable in these really challenging times. So Matthew, over to you and setting the scene for yourself. And we've worked together for many years, and I think the last time that we were together, we were doing a lean process roadshow, I think, travelling up and down the country, weren't we? I think various sites around the UK.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Marcus. As Marcus mentioned, I've been involved in lean for a long time, and I've been working in the printing industry since 2003. So I'm just going to summarise some of the main things that I've learned in that time. So lean is one of the basic principles behind lean, or fundamental things, is something called the Plan, Do, Check, Act improvement cycle or learning cycle. And so I'll just quickly go through that to remind us of what that's about. So if we could look at the first slide, please. So the plan, do, check, act cycle starts with planning, and in that what we try to do is to define what outcomes we want and the method by which we're going to get there. So if we take in this example that we want to increase the productivity of a press, see how that goes. So we've got a method and we've got some objectives. And the next quadrant is bottom right, the do. That's to actually run the method and actually follow the method as closely as possible. So those are fairly straightforward. The third one, the check cycle, we really want to be measuring the outcomes and what's going on. So this is where in the past it's been really difficult because we had to use handwritten timesheets and they were invariably not very accurate. They took a lot of effort to fill in and time. Even putting information onto spreadsheets to analyse it took a lot of effort. So it was probably more than a week before you could actually see and analyse the data. And by that time, what happened was lost in the mist of time. More recently, we now have the benefit of collecting the data from the machines directly. So modern Heidelberg equipment is actually collecting a lot of information, and it's transformed what we were able to do with it. So in the instance of increasing productivity, we're basically looking to measure how much time the process is running, how fast, and how much good product it's making, how much waste. And the final part of this is the act cycle, the top left-hand corner in green there. If we don't actually do something with this data, we've been wasting our time collecting it. So if the outcomes weren't what we planned, then we're probably a bit mad if we do it again without changing the method and the process. So that would be the first act. If it actually worked well and we achieved what we wanted, then we would want to standardise it so that next time we ran it, we would get the same result. And possibly after that, you may change one or two variables to continuous improve. So plan, do, check, act is fundamental to continuous improvement, and fundamental to that is collecting and analysing the data, and we now have a technology to do that easily. So we'll just look quickly at some of the measures which I think are important for productivity. The first one is to make sure that the process is running as much time producing product as quickly as possible. So availability. So we're measuring there the non-running time, which is changeover, maintenance, things we have to do, but we want to minimise, and then we're into the bad stuff of waiting, breakdowns, and the worst of all, no work. And notice these are things which are not necessarily under the control of the operator. So we're looking here at a measure which is already something that's impacted by the whole organisation. The next thing we want to know is it running as fast as possible? So this can be contentious about what does as fast as possible mean. I won't unpack that here, but I'll only say that often I find that to be rather a soft target. If we move on to the last factor, which is actually making sure that what we make is good, actually the run quality usually on presses, there's less than 1 or 2% waste during running. But we're not, if we're measuring OEE, that's all we measure. We need to measure too the waste which is coming from the make ready, from the overs, from the trim, all those things were vitally important. If we take these three measures in combination of availability, performance, and run quality, and multiply them together, we end up with what's known as overall equipment effectiveness, or OEE. So overall equipment effectiveness, OEE, is a very useful measure, but I'd argue it is primarily a management measure. If I'm on the shop floor running a piece of kit, what I need to know is I'm expected to run it as much time as possible, as fast as possible, and make good product. If I do that, the OEE is going to be good. So finally, really what Marcus has been talking about is vital, is how do you actually turn the lifeblood of data into use of your organisation? And the model I use is this rather complicated one here. So we've got a pulley system here. And on the left, we have a red dot, which is actually a plan, do, check, act cycle. It's the operator, he's running the machine. And he's doing it. His plan is to run it as much time as possible, as fast as possible, and make a quality product. And that's being recorded. The next chain pulley wheel there, the light green one, is the supervisor. And he ought to be having a look at this data at least once a day. Basically, this is where the quality check of the data comes in. This is the opportunity to find out if there's something wrong with the data collection process. So the supervisor should do that. And he should be doing it in an encouraging way. Great question to ask is, help me understand if there's a problem, not what on earth are you doing? Because this is not a tool for blame. As Marcus has been explaining, in companies that work well with this, everybody sees this as a constructive thing. And so we go on through the pulley box. The next cycle, the blue one, is the people who work in that department doing a weekly review, and they're looking at trends, they're looking for ideas of improvement. This is where the operators can come forward and say, do you know what, it would be a great idea if we have more tools around the press so that I don't have to walk so far, things like that. Get their engagement in it. That's a plan, do, check out cycle. The purple one is where you have the management team walking around once a week. Marcus mentioned this again. Excellent companies have the sales manager, the customer service manager, the planning manager, pre-press manager, the production manager, managing director, finance director. They walk around the shop floor, they walk through the whole company, through each area, looking at the data. They're seen to be there. People see it's important because they're there. They can talk to the people actually doing the work about what they're doing and emphasize the importance of it and take action on it. And the final big yellow one there is possibly the board, and they might be meeting in a room somewhere once a month, looking at a summary of this data, which the system can summarize easily. So, and they'll be making decisions about whether you need to buy a new piece of equipment or major investments, things like that. So in summary, what we have here is the KPIs and reports moving up through the organisation and direction and encouragement going down through it. What I'd finally like to finish on is something I found on LinkedIn. I don't often find anything very interesting on LinkedIn, but I thought this was good. It said KPI stands for Key Performance Indicators, but it also stands for keep people interested, and keep people informed, keep people involved, and keep people inspired. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question there, just because I think a lot of the audience and people listening to the recording will understand and get that, and they'll say, yeah, I know all of that. And you've been involved in projects where you've instilled a whole lean process system, and then 18 months later, they've gone back to old habits. So they've seen the benefit, but they've gone back to old habits. Or there's just barriers to actually doing things that are going to help your business. Why are there barriers to doing stuff that most people would say, that's self-evident, I understand that, I get it, but they're not doing it, or they don't instill it and embed it? That always intrigues me.
I think there are three things. One is the technical means to collect the data, which we now have through things like modern Heidelberg systems. The next one is to have a really good process for analysing and reviewing that data, which would be the last slide I showed you, that goes right through the whole organisation and promotes ownership throughout the organisation. And of course the third one is a bit of an old saw, but if the leadership of a company is not behind it, believes in it, involved in it, walking around and talking about it, it ain't going to happen. So it requires a cultural thing. It's interesting, if you look at the most successful companies in the past, Morris Motors, Raleigh Bicycles, Perkin Diesel, what you often find is that the boss would walk around the factory once a week, and he may not know every one of the 10,000 people who work there, but he would engage with people. So early in my career, the best advice I had was, as a production manager, watch the data, talk to the people, and that means listen.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's I was really getting engrossed with that, and that's really interesting. And it sort of ties in with what I'm going to sort of talk about with what you said, Marcus, and Matthew. Going back to when we first met, 2007, it was the first time I've ever heard anybody talk about OEE, and it's still relevant, more so now than it probably was then.
in those days, I'm afraid we were still working with paper and pencil, weren't we?
Yeah, and you could fudge the data, couldn't you?
Yes, yes.
Being an ex-printer, that was one thing that I could do quite easily.
Yeah, and now we have a benefit.
Shock horror.
So there's a revolution, really, because we now have this opportunity to do it so much easier. What we have to do is change the culture of the business to make use of that. And in fact, I don't think you're going to succeed unless you do, as Marcus was talking about.
So, following on from Matthew, Heidelberg do have a three-process step. So, as you see here on the presentation, we look at process one being looking at data collection, gathering that information. Then we need to analyze it. So, step two, and then moving on to implementation and optimization. And this is ever continuing steps. But if I throw in a statistic here, there's only 12% of print shops globally actually follow this process, or even follow the process that Matthew was talking about. And in the UK, it's only 19%. So if anything that comes out of this webinar, as Marcus was saying earlier, we want to encourage more print shops to be able to gather data and analyze it and then optimize. And, if you need support, there's support out there. Consultants or specialists like Matthew, you can call upon the BPIF, and Heidelberg offer also a business and performance support going forward. So this slide is sort of following on again with what Matthew's saying when we're talking about OEE. And I just want to sort of say, what OEE averages globally. And we see that 27%. Now, most people would think, crikey, that seems quite low. I thought it'd be a lot higher. But in the UK, I do see an average of more of 30% to 33% OEE. But there are some companies out there that are achieving higher OEE when they are following the steps that Matthew's pointed out and what I've just talked about with the three-process step, achieving up to 40% and some as much as 50%, and there's a handful achieving highs of 60% OEE, but they are continuously adapting, reviewing all the data, and I think really it's a cultural thing as well. I don't think, you've got to start really at the top. You've got to get the buy-in from the senior management guys, because otherwise it won't filter down to the guys on the shop floor. And I totally agree with you, Matthew. There's no point talking about OEE to a guy on a press. So when I was on a press, it would go straight over my head. So I totally agree. It is a management tool, and it's a great tool to look at the whole business.
Yes.
Not just looking at press performance, for instance. We could sort of say, well, what is achievable? And talking from personal experience, working with Heidelberg customers, and I've got one in mind. We started off with an OEE at this company at 17%, which is way below the global average and really quite low below the UK average of 30 to 33%. But working together as a partnership, and this isn't an overnight thing either, Matthew. Probably you concur that this takes years, and it's continuously working. You don't just because you hit a certain spot, you suddenly stop. You've got to continuously keep improving. This company now are at 49.5% OEE. So to go from 17% to 49%, nearly touching 50, is phenomenal. Yes, it's taken a number of years to get there, and they're not stopping there. They want to keep progressing. Their average run length is 3,000 sheets. So when you do look at that chart, and you look at where potentially they are, there's still room for improvement. We could still keep pushing on. But as I say, it starts from the top, and then that will then cascade down.
I'd like to point out to you, Paul, obvious really, but they haven't just made a sort of 10-20% improvement in OE. They've doubled the amount of work they can get through that factory.
Yeah,
they've doubled the amount they get through that overhead.
And if anything,
profits must have been huge.
Well, if anything, we've had tough times.
Yeah.
With the COVID, and it's made the company stronger.
Yeah.
So they've sailed through these tough times, and even now, we're with the power issues at the moment. This is a strong company now. So if they hadn't implemented this, 3-4 years ago, would they still be around? I'd hope they would be, but I think they're even stronger now, and I think that's a really strong message that that companies that do look at improving performance by using data makes them a stronger company. I'd like to sort of cover, just to sort of summarise, really, a couple of points. How we're driving profitability by using data. The first one, it seems obvious, but we do need to reduce touch points. So when I go back to that company that we were working with for a number of years, that's exactly what they've done. They've looked to automate as much as they can. They've looked to reduce all their touch points, not just in the press hall, but when data comes through, maybe from an MIS system, and then following it all the way through. So point one is reducing touch points. This would then help with driving productivity and uptime. And then, obviously, it's repeatability and consistency, which is quite key, which is exactly what you were saying as part of your presentation. And then finally, reducing waste and inventory. And it's a question that I sort of want to pose to you, Matthew, because when I look at important KPIs, waste is one of the most important, because it is a return on investment for a lot of customers.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got me started on a rant, Paul. I think it's fairly typical in a small litho company to find that 30% of the paper they buy goes in the skip.
Wow.
And that might be half their turnover. So if they're turning over 2.5 million sales, 5 million, they're spending 2.5 on material. And I can't do the maths quickly enough, but 30% of that 2.5 million is going in the skip. And that could often reasonably be reduced with savings of hundreds of thousands of pounds. Companies just don't see it. And the key to this is actually measuring the waste. And I can give you a quick tip on how to do that. Have a look at the invoices for your waste contractor and see how many tons they're taking away. Please do that.
No, it's a great tip.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like to sort of finally cut off there, but talk about something that's kind of new. It's an exciting product from Heidelberg, which will be available to our UK customers next year, is a new data analytic app called Insights. Heidelberg have 4 different data sources. So in order to measure OEE, you need a data capture tool. So let's cross over to Carolina now and hear about the new Heidelberg Insights app.
Thank you, Paul. I'm glad to be here and to give you this presentation about print shop analytics. So we have already heard about the importance of data in the print industry. And for us, it's also important how to access this data. Thinking about that, we created H+ and Print Shop Analytics. H+ is our new customer portal. It combines services that you already know from Heidelberg Assistant, and it has also new apps and Prenect services to be the entry point to all digital services of Heidelberg. For example, you can access shopping, administration, you have new production apps, support, and much more there. You will have one portal, that means one single entry point into the Heidelberg ecosystem. You will have all-in-one, all relevant data merged into one solution, and all that will be cloud-based. So you'll have updates wherever you are. Whenever you want to be informed, you can access H+. So H Plus is how you access the data and the apps and all the services in our digital ecosystem. And for us, it's also very important how you use the data. Data is a very important element in the print industry and a key element to improve the company's performance. And that's the reason of Print Shop Analytics. It is our new data power tool. And with it, you will have a holistic overview of the print shop with transparency over key performance indicators. You'll have real-time analysis, recommendations for action with our artificial intelligence technology. And as it is a cloud-based product, it will also be available online at any time. Print Shop Analytics comprises 3 apps: Insights, Benchmarking, and PET. And I will talk a little bit more about each of them. The app Insights is our newest development, and it focuses on the problem identification. With it, you can very easily spot problems in the production and improve your performance. So you don't need to know in detail each of the KPIs. You can very easily see what are the problems, what are the deviations, and act on it. There you have information about several relevant KPIs. You have real-time data with the machine status and also notifications in real time to inform you if any anomaly has happened. And you can also dig in deeper with the job details and details of each operation. Now I'm going to show to you the app Insights and our system and what you can do, what are the functions that we have there. So here I am in the H Plus portal on the home screen where you can add your own widgets and the apps that are more relevant for you. I added just the Insights app since it's the one I use, but you can also access it through the all apps. These are all the apps that we are currently, that we have currently in our H Plus portal. So I'll go inside our Insights app and show you how it looks like. The first thing that you see is the machines. You can see in real time what is the status of the machine. Here I see that 2 machines are stopped and there are 2 that are in good production. I can see here what is the progress of the jobs, what is the speed of the machines, and everything is sent to me in real time. So I get every 2 seconds, I get updates from the machines. I also have events. We will identify all the anomalies that has happened in the production. And here we have a list of all anomalies. We have currently 3 cases: unexpected machine downtime, planned run length exceeded, and planned waste exceeded. And this is the list of the details of the events that you receive, with also the notifications. Here you can get notifications of each of these events according to your notification settings. Here you can just choose what are the channels in which you would like to receive the notifications. Choosing H Plus, you will get notifications in the browser, and H Plus mobile app. If you have our mobile app installed, you can also get push notifications in your smartphone. And here you can also select which are the cases that you want to receive notifications for. If you click on one of the notifications, you will get the details of this event with the surplus of the run length. For example, there was this case there were more sheets produced than planned, and you get more details here. And you also see in the future concrete recommendations for action, what you can do to improve your performance more concretely. So now I'll go back and show to you one more area, the area of operations. Here you can sort the columns as you want, and you can also search for one job. Like here, I just wrote the word Canada, and it filters all the operations with this word. So I'm going into one of these operations. And I see here in the overview all the KPIs of this operation, what was okay, what was problematic. I see that there was more waste produced than planned, and I see also that there was more time to complete the production than actually planned. I can also check on the progress of the operation and the type of progress, and here I can see what was the speed of the machine during this operation, what were the activities performed, and I can easily see if there were any problems during production, if there was, for example, more washing than necessary, and so on. It's a very easy way to follow what happens and in each operation. Okay, the last area that I want to show to you is the area of dashboards. Here you get an overview of the dashboards as you want them. You get some standard dashboards like waste, production times, performance charts, and quality. These come as a standard for you, so you don't have to configure them. And you can also configure your own dashboards, like this one. The dashboard overview is one that I configured. And one important thing to say in this, at this point, is that all this configuration is user specific. So here I am at our demo organization, logged in as myself, and this is a view only for me. My colleagues will see something different depending on their configurations. So I'm seeing here that the waste dashboard has an exclamation mark indicating some problem in there. So I want to check what is the problem within this dashboard. And here I can see several widgets. According to my filter selection, I selected 2 machines that are more relevant for me, and I selected for this dashboard a custom time range, which is possible among other possible selections that you have. You can also select one specific shift to be analyzed, and this will be saved in your dashboard as the filters of this dashboard. So I have here the total amount of waste, the percentage of waste, what is the total amount over time per machine, so I can easily compare the waste produced month by month per machine. And one thing that's quite new is also that we show the deviations. We are not only showing what was actually produced, but we show what is the deviation from the planned value. So here I see that we produced less waste than planned in the waste summary widget. And if I want to see more detail, I can also check here the make ready waste was actually more than produced, but it was counterbalanced by the run waste, that it was much less waste produced than planned. There is also the possibility of digging in deeper if you want to know more about a specific problem. For example, I want to know more about the make-ready ways, so I click on the title of this widget and I'll get here all the operations that are relevant for the filter settings. Yeah, so I get here the list of all the operations sorted by deviation, and I can also check these operations in more detail as I showed to you in the operations area. So this was a short overview of the app Insights. I hope you liked it. And now I hand back to Paul, who is going to tell you more about the release dates of this app in the UK. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Carolina. What this new Insights app, which is cloud-based, will do is take the best data from all 4 sources. So we'll have one data source going forward, which can only be a good thing going forward from my perspective. It's very easy to use. For me, when I'm looking at data, I like to visually see pie charts or graphs, and rather than lots and lots of data. Yes, you can get the data if you want it, but for me, visually and reporting on the data is a lot more simplified. So we will be doing another webinar coming soon. So look out for that, and there will be a video to accompany that. So yeah, exciting times with this new product, Insights from Heidelberg.
I was going to say, one of the things that when we started chatting a couple of weeks ago was that sort of Team GB, that the UK printers, even with the opportunity to close the gap, are outperforming every other country in the world. So that's a really good sort of positive sign, and there's a great opportunity. But is this being launched in the UK, or is it a UK only? So
no, so
at the moment, you're launching it worldwide?
Yeah, so at the moment it's launched in Australia, and Austria, and launched in Japan. Okay. Then I think it'll be following on Germany, the US, and then coming to the UK shores next year.
Right.
So quite exciting, yeah. I think that's about time at the moment. So I'd just like to thank our specialist, our guest, for coming down, taking the time down to come down to the Heidelberg showroom. It's nice to meet you again after all these years, and it's nice to meet you for the first time, Marcus. So thank you for coming down.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank you to you, the audience, for partaking, whether you're watching live or you'll watch back on the demand. So yeah, look out for the next webinar session from Heidelberg, and thank you for joining.